The New York Giants dominated the Philadelphia Eagles in primetime thanks to a scat trick. Locked On Giants starts right now.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, welcome on in to our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. All right, Giant fans, it happened. The New York Giants upset the Philadelphia Eagles 34-17 in primetime. What a game. Oh my gosh, what a game. This is what Giants football should be all about, ladies and gentlemen. The Giants completely dominated the Eagles, shut them out in the second half of the game, kept them off the scoreboard. It was a great defensive showing, a strong offensive showing. Special teams was on point. It was just how Giant football should be. So on today's program, we're going to break it all down. We're going to talk about some firsts specific to the offense and just how the offense did in general. We'll get into that a little detail. Then we'll take a look at the dominating defense and what they did to shut down the defending Super Bowl champions. And then we'll wrap things up with the precocious and infectious rookies that this team has that has just brought smiles to, as you can see, to my face and also to, I'm sure, a lot of your faces. So again, that's our top list of topics for today. Welcome on into everyone. All right, Giant fans, let's get into it. The Giants, the most points, 34 points in this game, most points since December 30th, 2012, and a 42-7 win over the Eagles. So the 34 points, the most points scored against the Philadelphia Eagles. All right. The Giants with Jaxson at quarterback has 3 starts. Each start has featured a touchdown on the opening drive. And for the first time since 2009, the Giants have had back-to-back scores on their first 2 drives in a game. That again, thanks to Jaxson. It is the first time that the Giants this season have had 20 points in the first half. All right. The Giants historically have just gotten off to a slow start. They finally got off to a fast start, which was a big help. First time they have scored 7 points in the first quarter of their last 81 games, which was the second longest streak in the NFL. So the Giants dominating on offense. All right, so let's take a look at some of what they did that was so special. All right, situation football is always such a key to winning. The Giants, for the first time this year, 100% efficiency in the red zone. They were 3 of 3. They had 10 runs and 3 passes. That was a big, big difference. Now, earlier in the year, the red zone struggles. The Giants were doing a lot more passing, a lot of shotgun, a lot of wide plays, slow developing plays. I guess the coaches finally got the memo that you got to run things quicker down there in the red zone. So bing, bang, boom, they were running plays up the gut. A lot of the runs came right in between the guards, and they were having success. They had success. So that was nice to see. The Giants also 68.8% in third down conversions. That was another big key. The last time the Giants had that, well, I don't think they've had that good of a conversion rate this year. And just to go back real quick to the red zone conversion rate, the last time the Giants had a 100% conversion rate in the red zone was on November 28th against Dallas last year in a losing effort. So the Giants overall fantastic on offense. All right, now let's take a look at some individual stats. All right, it's Skattebo. that little human bowling ball. Love this guy. I love how he runs. His whole demeanor kind of reminds me of John Riggins. I've said that before. Cam Skattebo, 98 yards on 19 carries, an average of 5.2 yards per carry, 18 yards being his long, 3 touchdowns. He had the hat trick, or I should say the scat trick. All right, even more impressive was what Skattebo did after contact. 3.37 yards after contact. The guy's just really difficult to bring down to the ground. So that was certainly a positive development for the Giants. And incidentally, it was kind of funny. There was a sign in the stands last night. People were saying, Saquon who? Because Saquon Barkley was there. His big premiere of his documentary, which I happened to see, aired yesterday, debuted yesterday, and Skattebo kind of made the Giant fans forget about losing Saquon Barkley, because this kid is just such a good runner and he's got such an infectious personality. And Skattebo, he's just so into it. I mean, you gotta love his style. You gotta love his nature boy woo after every big run. So that was really cool to see. All right, so what else did we have from the Giants offense? We had Jaxson Dart going 17 of 25, 195 yards. He took 2 sacks, had 1 touchdown. He also had a rushing touchdown, a 20-yarder, which added to the 5-touchdown barrage of the Giants. So, Dart's numbers, not, eye-popping, but, it's what he did with the numbers. And what, his overall rating, 104.6, really pretty good. Dart did have to come out of the game for a couple plays when he got dinged on a quarterback sneak. But you know what? This kid, what's not to love about this kid? Seriously. Some other top performers: Wan'Dale Robinson, 6 receptions on 7 targets, 84 yards, 1 touchdown. And hey, the Giants brought up Lil Jordan Humphrey, who had 4 catches on 8 targets, 55 yards. He had a long of 34, and hey, contested catches. Lil Jordan Humphrey was pretty good in that area. So the offense, what can you say about the Giants offense? It was a solid game. Very few mistakes. A couple plays I'm sure here and there they would have liked to have had back. But third down efficiency was top notch. 366 total yards of net offense, which was pretty good. 172 yards on the ground. We were wondering, would the Giants running game ever take off? Well, here it has. Oh, and the biggest stat of all, no turnovers. That's right. After last week's 5-turnover game, the Giants had no turnovers, right? So the 5 turnovers last week, as far as I'm concerned, that's it for the year. No more turnovers. So the Giants offense getting it done against Philadelphia Eagles, just totally outplaying them in every facet of the game offensively. All right, now, what about the dominating defense? Well, we will talk about the dominating defense and how good of a game they had right after this. Hey, Giant fans, when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keeps you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. There are some times when you can't wait for days to get that part you need for a project. Well, now you don't have to wait, because Supply House has next day delivery, and their part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Trainer. We are talking about a Giants win over the Philadelphia Eagles on Primetime. Does it get any better than that to start the weekend? I'm telling you, I can't stop smiling over that. I am so happy, not just for the players, for John Mara, who, was shown on TV last night. He's dealing with that cancer that, he was diagnosed with, so best wishes to him. But I'm happy for you guys because I've heard your cries, your feedback regarding the team, how desperate it's become with the coaching staff, with this, that, and the other thing. This one's for you, Giant fans. I think we could all go into the weekend with a smile on our face, and especially over the next, several days, because the Giants have a little mini bye week now, and just feel good about this win because it was a big one. And I've got to send a shout out, by the way, to Bad Dog. Bad Dog, we've had him on the live stream along with the entertainer. And Bad Dog, I know he desperately, desperately wanted the Giants to beat the Eagles at some point. I'm sure Bad Dog is just absolutely rolling in glee this morning as, after that big win. So shout out to you, Bad Dog, and to all you Giant fans. All right, let's now talk about the Giants defense and their role in this really nice win. All right. The Giants defense held the Eagles to just 73 yards rushing on 20 carries. This is the second week in a row the run defense has stepped up. And, a guy who's not going to get probably a whole lot of credit for his role in the run defense, not just this week, but last week, but I'm going to give him a shout out here, is Kayvon Thibodeau, who played some solid contain, particularly against the Eagles. That's why Jalen Hurts, the quarterback who can hurt you with his legs, Hurts was limited to 7 carries, 13 yards, with a long of 9. All right, Saquon Barkley, old friend, Saquon was held to 58 yards on 12 carries, and he had a long of 18, and 31 yards of his total of 58 came on the opening drive. So the Giants did a really, really nice job of clamping down on them. And of course, there was also that big fumble that the Giants were able to, cause against A.J. Dillon, the other Eagle running back. And that turnover basically allowed the Giants to bleed out the clock at the end of the game. So that was a huge one as well. All right, let's talk about, actually, before we get to the pass rush, just real quick, so going back to Saquon Barkley, Barkley was limited to 1.17 yards before contact, 3.67 yards after. And I mentioned Cam Skattebo in the last segment. By comparison, Cam Skattebo was 1.79 yards before contact and 3.37 yards after contact. So Skattebo, like I said, making people forget about Saquon Barkley. All right, back to the defense and the pass rush in particular. Brian Burns, Burn Baby Burns, love it. Brian Burns is having a heck of a year. All right, second straight year he is having a good year for the Giants. He had 2 of the 3 sacks last night, 2 tackles for a loss, 2 quarterback hits. Brian Burns currently has 7 sacks. He was shut out last week, but he kind of made up for it. So he has 7 sacks, currently tied with Nick Bonito for the league lead. He is a half sack away from his 7th straight season with at least 7.5 sacks. At this rate, Brian Burns is headed for double digits. If he stays healthy and he continues this pace, double digits is in his future. How good has that trade been for the Giants? All right. Not a whole lot has gone well with the Giants in terms of some of the personnel decisions they've made, but that one, ladies and gentlemen, so far paying off huge dividends. All right. The other thing of note on the defense, Shane Bowen, apparently, or assuming it was his decision, if not, whoever's decision it was, they finally got the memo regarding that cornerback 2 rotation. All right, Cordell Flott and Deonte Banks. I never got that whole idea, that whole, concept of rotating the guys. Cordell Flott has been outplaying Deonte Banks going back to the summer, going back to training camp. And yet they kept taking snaps away for him to get Banks in there. And the only thing I could think of was, It's a scholarship for Banks. First round draft pick. They want to make a decision, on his 5th-year option, which they have to do next May. Well, hello. I mean, Banks has regressed each year. And if you haven't figured that decision out by now, well, then I don't know what to tell you. But here's the good thing. The Giants had Banks play only 3 snaps on defense, 0 in the first half, by the way. And did you notice how much cleaner, granted, there were a couple of busted coverages, not so much by Flott, more so by the safeties, but did you notice how much cleaner the cornerback play was? I did. So, Flott, he got his bigger role. He also had a huge interception. I think that was the one that went for, was it 58 yards? No, 68 yards. I'm sorry. And it turned into a Giants score. The Giants were able to convert off of that turnover. So the Giants' strong defensive showing. And let's take a look at the situational play by the Giants defense, which was also pretty good. So they held the Eagles to just 11.1% on third down. The Eagles going 1 of 9 on third down. The Eagles average, 6.1 yards per offensive play. But again, it didn't really matter because the Giants held them. They shut them out in the second half. And they also held them to a field goal on that opening drive, which the Giants' special teams, unfortunately, the kickoff didn't go to the landing zone, and the Eagles had really good field position, but they weren't able to get 7 points. They had to settle for a 42-yard field goal by Jake Elliott, so that was good by the Giants' defense. All right, what else? The tight end situation, well, Dallas Goedert managed to get 110 yards on 9 catches out of 11 pass targets and a touchdown. That wasn't, something you like to see. A little too wide open underneath as the defense kind of played the deep ball, trying to take away A.J. Brown, trying to take away, Devonta Smith, Jahan Dotson. They did a pretty good job of that. I think Brown was the only one who had like 80 yards receiving, but nothing really damaging as far as that was concerned. Wasn't perfect, but it was a solid effort by the Giants defense. And just real quick, the tush push. Can we talk about that play? I mean, you guys know how I feel about it. And if you don't, I hate that play. I hate it with a passion. I wish they would get rid of it. And one of the reasons why I hate it is because there were a couple times the Eagles ran it last night. I think they ran it 4 times in a row. And it was so clear that the guards were moving early. And why that isn't officiated and why that isn't called is beyond me. All right? If they're going to insist on keeping the tush push, which it looks like they're going to, then make it a reviewable play. All right? Because there's movement being done that is being missed. Never mind the fact that, I still say it's a dangerous play. And I think DJ Davidson, the Giants defensive lineman, got injured on the tush push. All right. So I don't like that play. I know some of you out there are going to say that I'm whining about it. I hate the play. I think it should be removed from the NFL's, list of legal plays. Just get rid of it. Maybe this offseason coming up will be the year that they finally do. I don't know. But it says a lot that other teams aren't running it because how they feel about it. And, it just has to go. I'm sorry. So anyway, rant over. All right, Giant fans, coming up next, we're going to talk about the infectious Giants rookies and the effect that they have had on the locker room on this edition here of Locked On Giants. Don't go anywhere. Hey, Giant fans, the NFL season is here and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. The Giants with a big win over the Philadelphia Eagles. And if you're not smiling, then I don't know what to tell you, because that was one heck of a game. Really was. It was a fun game. It was so worth staying up for. And oh my gosh, the mood amongst the Giants locker room is just amazing. And, a win cures a lot of things, no question about it. But let's talk about the addition of Cam Skattebo and Jaxson Dart and what they have brought to that locker room, because I think it's very, very important. For years, the Giants were stuck in a rut. They they would have bad losses, they would just, everything would kind of go down the drain, so to speak, as the season went on. What Jaxson Dart and what Cam Skattebo in particular have brought to that locker room is this enthusiasm, this youthful enthusiasm that I don't think I've seen in I don't know how many years. Rookies have come and gone on this team. Odell Beckham Jr., when he was here, he was kind of excitable, but he hasn't been here in a while. All right, Malik Neighbors was kind of feeling his way around a little bit, even though he's an exciting player to watch. Dart and Skattebo, both exciting, and they bring the juice that has been missing from that locker room. And you listen to the veterans talk about that juice, and they say, yeah, it's infectious. It's might be a byproduct of these two young players having really not experienced the doldrums of losing year in and year out. Maybe that's it. But to see these two in action, it's just, how do you not smile about it? I mean, you saw Jaxson Dart. I mean, if you were watching the broadcast, Jaxson Dart, when the official kind of had his hand up on that goal line play, Dart came over and gave him a high five. You see Skattebo doing the backflips and the woos. So, I mean, that's infectious. And Cordell Flott spoke about it. Brian Burns spoke about it. Brian Dable has spoken about it, how infectious that is in the locker room and how that carries over. And, it was kind of interesting. When Dart had to come out of the game to be evaluated for a head and neck injury, Dable and Skattebo both did something they shouldn't have done. They went over to the blue medical tent and they were kind of like trying to stick their head in there to find out what was going on. Now, you're not supposed to do that. I think that's illegal. According to league rules, you're not supposed to go in when a player is being evaluated for a concussion or looked at for an injury. But that just goes to show you how important Jaxson Dart has become to the Giants offense. I mean, Dable even said after the game, he was trying to get an idea of how long it was going to take, because he was all set to burn a timeout on, I think it was a fourth down that was coming up. He was all set to burn a timeout if it meant waiting or buying time for Jaxson Dart to get out of the tent, get his helmet back, and get back on the field. Now, fortunately, Jaxson Dart was okay. He was able to return. P.S., as much as I like the fact that, he's able to move a little bit with his legs and extend plays and work on design runs, the kid's got to tone it down a little bit, because I fear that one of these days he's going to take a hit and he's going to get knocked out of the game. So I don't know if that means, pulling back a little bit or whatnot. But while you admire his toughness, you don't want to lose him, because he's trying to be that hero. He's trying to get that last down, or that last yard, I should say, on each down. All right, live to see another day. That's something he's going to have to learn, unfortunately. But it's going to unfortunately come the hard way, I think, with him. But it's interesting, because Cam Skattebo was also sticking his head in the medical tent when Dart was in there. Now, Skattebo after the game said, "Oh, I was just doing that to make sure he wasn't tearing anybody up, because I know what a dog he is and what a competitor, and how he wanted to be back out there." But that just goes to show you how much energy Dart brings to the field. And, no disrespect to Russell Wilson, but when Wilson came out there to relieve Dart for a couple plays, you can almost feel the drop in the energy. So, with Dart and even with Skattebo, they finally have something that they have been missing in that locker room for the longest time. And that's that juice, that energy on offense. And yes, it does carry over. Now, again, no disrespect to anybody else in terms of, who's on that team. Russell Wilson, for example, is a very upbeat person, but his energy is a little different, I think, from darts. Russell Wilson's was more manufactured, whereas darts, to me, is a little bit more natural. Same thing with Skattebo. These are guys who are just a little bit more natural in terms of the energy they're emitting. So that's been a big factor. It's an X factor. It's not something that's talked about a whole lot, but it has made a difference because you've got two guys who are fierce competitors who bring the juice every week, who are pretty good so far at what they've been doing or what they've been asked to do. And it's just a matter of time before it all clicks, and suddenly now we're talking about wins more often than we're talking about losses. And speaking of which, how weird is it to think that the Giants could have won or should have won the game against Dallas? They should have found a way to beat New Orleans. Had they done that, their record would have been what, 4-2 at this point? And I know I always say woulda, coulda, shoulda, didn't. But when you think about how close they came in that Dallas game, the Saints game, they really didn't give themselves a chance because they had the 5 turnovers. But when you think about what could have been, oh boy, maybe the season isn't as bad as we thought it would be. So that being said, the Giants, with a convincing victory over a team they had no business beating, according to the prognosticators, but they did. They will see the Eagles again in 2 weeks. Until then, they've got a date out in Denver next week against a Broncos team that is playing the Jets over in London. So we will have breakdowns of that coming up next week, obviously. We'll have all new episodes of Locked On Giants coming up next week. And that'll do it for this edition. Now, before we say goodbye, as always, thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. The NFL season is finally here. So for your next listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast with Tyler, the Madman Rowland, giving you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Giant fans, thanks again for spending part of your day with us here on Locked On Giants. Have a great weekend, everybody, and I will see you next week.